Hi, Katie.
Hi, Alex.
It's great to meet up with you here again on Mozart Snapshots.
Thanks. It's great to see you too, as always.
So, I'm guessing we're going to the Mozart Wohnhaus today.
Great guess, because right behind you is the Mozart Wohnhaus, where the family Mozart lived from 1773 until Leopold's death in 1787. But it's not where we're going, because right across the Markartplatz is a beautiful church which is called the Dreifaltigkeitskirche, or in English, Trinity Church.
The Mozarts didn't have very far to go for church on Sundays.
That would be true if they went to church here, but remember, both Leopold and Wolfgang were employed by the archbishop, which kept them basically in the Salzburger Dome, even on Sundays.
But the Dreifaltigkeitskirche was here already in those days, wasn't it?
Definitely, because it was built between 1694 and 1702, and even then, it was considered the most important sacred building on the right side of the Salzach. Would you like to go in and see it?
Let's go.
Okay.
This is a very palatial design. Who built this church?
The Baroque architect Johann Bernhard Fischer von Erlach. He's also the guy that built the Karlskirche in Vienna, so you might notice a few similarities.
Ah, okay. And what about the dome?
The dome is a depiction of the coronation of Mary by the Holy Trinity.
Who painted the frescoes?
Johann Michael Rothmeier, who also painted the beautiful frescoes in the residence.
I see. So, what is Mozart's connection to the church?
He wrote his only totally choral mass for this church, the Missa in Honorum Sanctissimae Trinitatis, K167, and it was premiered here on Trinity Sunday, the 5th of June, 1773.
Was it a commission of the archbishop?
It was indeed, because Mozart was 17 years old at the time, and the year before, he had been appointed concertmaster of the court orchestra by the brand new Archbishop Hieronymus von Colloredo. Colloredo, as the successor of Schrattenbach, who had died in 1771, made a number of new rules for everything, even down to church music. And scholars believe that the differences in style and orchestration in this particular mass were due to these new rules of Colloredo.
Mozart's dearest friend, Colloredo.
That's right, the guy that's probably responsible for Mozart leaving this beautiful town.
And I imagine Wolferl was also organist here.
Well, actually he wasn't. His father tried very hard to get him the position of organist here when it became available, but he lost out to a man by the name of Johann Michael Haydn.
When?
This was in 1777, and actually there was quite a sad story behind it.
What happened?
So the organist here, dating back all the way to the year 1760, was Cajetan Adelgasser. And Adelgasser was also the organist of the Salzburger Dome. Well, one Sunday in December of 1777, he was playing the organ during Mass, as he did every Sunday, and suddenly he started playing really badly. Leopold and some of the other court musicians were there at the time, and they all thought that Adelgasser was just drunk. Well, anyway, he continued playing, and the playing got worse and worse up until the point when he actually couldn't use his left hand anymore. Eventually, they had to carry him away from the organ, and it turns out that he was not drunk, but rather he had had a stroke while playing, and he died shortly thereafter.
What a sad and creepy story.
It is indeed, but anyway, it left the position of organist here in this church vacant. And Leopold, being the award-winning father that he was, did his absolute best to get Wolfgang the job over his rival Hayden. So Leopold downplayed all of Haydn's accomplishments. He even claimed that he was a drunkard, which couldn't have been farther from the truth. But in the end, it didn't really matter because Wolfgang didn't get the job anyway, and Hayden did.
Well, no one can say Leopold didn't always try his best for Wolferl.
That is very true.
So now, Michael Haydn was the younger brother of Franz Joseph Haydn, wasn't he?
He was 5 years younger, and unfortunately history has kind of relegated him to the shadows behind his older and more famous brother. But in his day, Michael Haydn was one of the most important musicians in Salzburg, and he composed more than 800 works.
What brought him to Salzburg?
Archbishop Schrattenbach, because Schrattenbach had this Vizekapellmeister by the name of Leopold Mozart. And Leopold was on tour more and more with his son, which meant that Schrattenbach had to find somebody who was capable, who could fill in for Leopold. And so, in 1762, he enticed Michael Haydn here to take over Leopold's job when he was gone.
How long did Haydn stay in Salzburg then?
The rest of his life, because unlike Wolfgang, Haydn loved Salzburg and he was completely content here.
And did he also compose for the archbishop?
Yes, so at the beginning it was mostly secular works for the court. But then, when Wolfgang had moved to Vienna, Leopold Mozart, of course, could no longer give all the church commissions to his son, and so Haydn got the job, and he more or less took Mozart's place, and he also became his successor as organist of the Salzburger Dome.
Tell me, was his music respected?
Very much, because it was quite revolutionary in terms of Catholic church music, particularly for his graduals, which he composed every Sunday. They became the model for an entire generation of Southern German and Austrian church music.
And why isn't he more famous today?
Because for whatever reason, Haydn didn't want to have his music published, and so it only got around by handwritten copies which circulated between the monasteries.
Schade. What a shame.
It is, and it's especially a shame because even until today, a large majority of his works are unpublished.
And did he have any influence on Wolferl?
Yes, scholars point to a number of striking similarities between certain works, between the two composers. For instance, the requiems of Haydn and Mozart. Haydn's requiem was composed a good 20 years earlier than Mozart's, and incidentally, when the requiem was played for the first time in honor of Archbishop Schrattenbach, both Leopold and Wolfgang were in the orchestra that performed it. And then there's also similarities between the symphonies, particularly in the use of fugal elements in the fourth movement in symphonies like Mozart's Great Jupiter Symphony.
We always imagined that Mozart just sprang out magically out of nowhere.
That's right, but you know, that's not the case actually. And part of Mozart's genius was that he was really like a sponge. And he was able to absorb influences from everywhere, and then he would develop them in his own completely brilliant way.
What kind of relationship did Mozart and Haydn have?
One of mutual respect and friendship, and actually there's a wonderful tale that really illustrates this point, and that's that on Mozart's very last visit to Salzburg in 1783 with his new wife Constanze, he paid a visit to Michael Haydn. At the time, Haydn was in the middle of trying to complete a commission of 6 duos for violin and viola, but he was quite sick at the time, and he had written 4 already. But to get these last 2 written, he was just really too sick. And so Wolfgang composed 2 duos and he gave them to Haydn. He never put his name on the manuscript, so it's pretty clear that he intended his friend to turn in his work as his own.
That is friendship indeed. Well, Katie, thanks as always und bis bald. Servus.
Bitte schön. Servus.